Thank you so much for joining us today. For those of you who have just logged on, my name is Julie Henderson, and I am the Vice President of Philanthropy here at SPCA. We appreciate you joining us this afternoon for our 2024 Lunch and Learn informational series. Today, we are incredibly excited because we get to highlight our behavior and training department's use of cooperative care with a background method in its history. But first, it is my pleasure to introduce East Bay SPCA's President and CEO, Allison Lindquist, to start today's program. Allison.
Hi, welcome everyone. We really hope that you enjoy today's webinar, and please feel free to add questions to the chat, and Micah will try to get to as many of those as possible. So welcome and enjoy.
Thanks, Allison. It is now my honor to introduce East Bay SPCA's Behavior and Training Specialist, Micah McKechnie. Micah has been training using positive reinforcement since she was the age of 12. She has experience in training and handling dogs, cats, rodents, horses, sheep, goats, donkeys, alpacas, and birds of prey, which is incredibly impressive. Micah is a certified professional dog trainer known as CEST, and has completed Susan Friedman's Living and Learning with Animals Behavior Professionals course, and was a team leader in East Bay SPCA's partnership with Jackson Galaxy Cat Positive Program. It's my honor to call her a colleague, and we are incredibly grateful to have her here as a member of our East Bay SPCA team. Mike is going to run us through a 25-minute presentation, after which she and Allison will answer questions. If you have any questions, we encourage you to type them into the chat using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we will get to as many as we can within our time frame after the presentation ends. Micah, it's all yours.
Got it. Thank you so much, Julie, and thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that y'all can see our presentation. Okay. That's perfect. Well, welcome. Today we are going to be talking about cooperative care and how zoo training has influenced our modern training world. So today what we're going to learn about is how positive reinforcement training as we know it had its genesis, was born, how zoos and aquariums really pioneered what is now referred to as cooperative care, how East Bay SPCA uses cooperative care and fear-free practices in the shelter, how that has manifested for us as an organization, and talk about representation and accessibility of this type of training, and how you as members of the public can train this way with your own animals. And before we dive deep into all of this, I wanted to find a couple of terms that we're going to be throwing freely around today. So positive reinforcement, many of you might be familiar with this in various facets. And while positive reinforcement itself refers specifically to a type of training strategy where a learner is marked and reinforced for a specific behavior. So a behavior happens, you use something to mark the moment that they get it right, and then they are rewarded or reinforced to make sure that they are interested in doing that behavior again. But positive reinforcement as a term has become an umbrella for all manner of fear-free, force-free practices, including something called cooperative care. Now, cooperative care essentially refers to an exercise where the learner, whether it's a dog or a cat or a fish or whatever, whomever you're working with, and yes, it can be done with fish, consents and participates directly and actively with the husbandry practice. So essentially, they are active participants in whatever we are trying to do with them. Where did this start? The birth of modern training began in zoos and aquariums. They had kind of a conundrum back in the day, which was, how do you train an animal you can't touch? You can't put a bit on a dolphin. You can't use a spur or a whip on a dolphin. So how are you going to ask them to do very specific behaviors? Karen Pryor in the 1960s really pioneered what is now an entire industry of modern positive reinforcement force-free animal training. And she did this using a marker to say, hey, that's when you got it right, and a reinforcer, tossing them a fish. Hey, if you want more fish, do the thing, you'll hear the click, or in her case, the whistle, when you're working with dolphins, and you will receive a reward. Now, these methods were incredibly effective at communicating what you wanted the animal to do without using punitive measures and without using force. And they began circulating through zoos and aquariums, but they were primarily used for shows, for presentations. But because they were so effective, people began to ask the question, well, what else can we do with this type of training? Normally, previously, if you needed to do any kind of invasive veterinary handling with exotic animals, you would either have to restrain them, which can be quite stressful, or anesthetize them, which can be quite dangerous. If you're a giraffe, that's a lot of space to move blood around, and sedating them can be a risky process. So all of this positive reinforcement force-free training begs the question, can wild animals willingly submit to and actively choose to participate in things like blood draws, foot care, dental care, routine physicals, administering necessary medication, even daily medication, vaccinations, or other things that you might want to do with them in a zoo setting? And the answer is yes, it is so cool. For the next several slides, I do want to give a content warning. We are going to be seeing some needles and some blood draws. It is going to be in this next video and in the subsequent video. So if that is something that you're uncomfortable with, I will let you know. You will see that in these two videos. So this is such a cool representation of a truly voluntary behavior. This is a spotted hyena, and it's crazy how big they are in person. This is an animal who is voluntarily offering their neck for a blood draw. I'm going to go ahead and speed this up a little bit so that we can have a bit more time here. Now, what you're going to see, and again, content warning, this is going to include a needle. This hyena is voluntarily putting their neck up against the bars. This is a learned behavior. It starts with a target, you build duration, and you get an animal who is willing to wait while you do a procedure, whether that is shaving them down, whether that is, in this case, taking blood or administering a vaccine. This is completely voluntary, and you'll see the moment that she marks and clicks and says, hey, you did it, this is what you want. It's extraordinary that an animal would willingly submit themselves to this kind of handling. Now, in this video, we are going to see a number of different cooperative care behaviors represented. And again, towards the end of the video, there will be a blood draw. So again, let me go ahead and speed this up here. So this is a tiger at the Copenhagen Zoo, and you will see that he is receiving rewards for targeting. This is a paw target, so he's been trained to hold his foot in this special contraption and hold it there so that his keepers can shave it, administer vaccines, check for any type of, foot care he needs. You'll see him following a target here. So please touch this with your nose, click treat, good job. And now here we're going to see a very cool behavior. He's going to ask him to open his mouth. Now this is sped up, so the duration seems quite short, but this is actually a tiger who is holding open that mouth so that they can do dental care. Now this final behavior is a station where they're then going to say, can you sit still while I pull your tail through this opening? And then again, content warning, we are going to see them first shave the area. Can you sit still while we shave the area? And then can you sit still while we tourniquet and do a blood draw? Now, the fact that these behaviors are available to us is incredible. You would have never assumed necessarily that an animal would submit themselves willingly for what might be an uncomfortable or painful procedure. But turns out pain is not generally the #1 thing that animals find aversive in these situations. And we're going to talk about that when we talk about how we use this in shelter. Now, I want to give a bit of context to this final video. Early in, I think it was the 1980s, 1990s, there was an elephant at the San Diego Zoo who was so aggressive to their keepers that they couldn't go in and give any kind of veterinary care, and certainly not any kind of foot care. So this elephant went 10 years without any kind of foot care. They brought in a behavioral consultant who taught them how to clicker train the elephant to voluntarily offer their foot. And within 2 months, this elephant who hadn't had foot care within 10 years was voluntarily and very happily offering their feet for hoof care. Now, I'm actually going to play this one with sound.
Their foot care, and they're just a priority. It is always something that we keep on our radar. We just make sure every day to carve out some part of the day to get to look at them. With having spaces in all different parts of the barn so we can look at their feet kind of no matter where they are is really helpful. We're working towards that now. We have that nice PC wall, which is protected contact wall. So we have a space that we have that adjustable foot port, which is really helpful because our elephants are all very big, different sizes and shapes.
We use the same tools that a farrier would use on a horse, so they might look kind of familiar to some of the people who have horses out there. And the most important thing that we're trying to do for these guys is make sure that their nails are up off the ground. Otherwise, their ridiculously large body weight puts too much pressure on them and they can crack and get abscesses.
So as you can see in this video, every single day, this animal is getting foot care. And that is possible because of these methods. Now, that begs a different question. Why not companion animals? This is transformative. This is an amazing practice. How come we don't see this with dogs and cats and birds and horses? There's a number of different reasons for that. One of them is what we tend to refer to as either cultural fog or cultural folklore. Is that refers to the things that everyone knows. Everyone knows you can't do that with a cat. Are you kidding? You're not going to train voluntary behaviors with a cat. In fact, you can. But it's sort of this ubiquitous idea that, my animal couldn't do that. I definitely don't think they're, it's faster to just get anything done that you need to do by holding them down and just doing it. There is certainly sometimes the feeling that using rewards, using reinforcers is just bribery. You're going to spoil your animal. And certainly my favorite myth, you can't train a cat. That is one of my favorite ones to debunk. And it's so much fun. We're going to see a cool example of that in a little bit. But the two things that I think are most contribute to why this is not more ubiquitous in our current culture is there's a lack of representation. Where do you see this, right? Where do you have the opportunity to see people training this way? And lack of accessible education. It is a skill to acquire the knowledge to train this way with your companion animals, with your pets. But we at East Bay SPCA are working to change that, and we're going to give you an overview of how that works. Now, in shelter, as you might imagine, we can't always do everything that you see in those videos because we have a fast-paced environment. We're very lucky in that we often have a really quick turnaround with getting animals adopted. But that means we don't have the luxury to train these very intricate behaviors for complex procedures with the animals in shelter. There's a lot of high volume and the pressure is on for us to get everyone through the system. However, it still works. Some of you may be familiar with the term fear-free. This is something that we as a shelter, many of our staff members are fear-free certified. Essentially what this means is there are elements of cooperative care that still can be utilized in a very fast-paced environment. Even if you're not training complex behaviors, it still works. The principles are still sound. And I want to show you all some examples of that. So all three of these videos, these are all animals in our behavior program. So these are not Joe Schmo, doggo, or cat who's like, yeah, cool, just do anything. I like people, I'll eat a hot dog. These are all animals who have specific fear, handling, sensitivities that would make it otherwise very difficult for them to be fully restrained, let's say. So this first video, and again, I'm going to go ahead and speed us up here. This is a dog who had very much snapped and attempted to bite for handling in the past. And this is, we're going to give him a vaccine. So you'll see, we are just opening up a can of baby food. All meat baby food is very popular. And you're going to see one of our staff members over here begin to do a couple of fake pokes to say, hey, how are you feeling about it? I'm going to test the waters a little bit, and then I'm going to go in and give you a vaccine. This dog is not under restraint. They're not on a leash. They are free to move away at any time. And indeed, we encourage them to say, hey, if you want to opt out, we want you to know that that's an option. Go ahead, and we're giving that vaccine, and it's done. So this second one, obviously, all right, that's a dog, cool, they're eating food. Is a cat really going to allow you to do that? And amazingly, the answer is yes. This is a kitten in our Hisses to Kisses program. So a kitten that started off extremely fearful and did not want anything to do with people, would not approach us, hissing, running away, swatting at us. And after some time in our Hisses to Kisses program, we discovered they needed another vaccine. They needed their booster. Now, I don't believe you'll be able to see the needle on this one. Oh, yes, I guess you will. Sorry about that. I should have given you another content warning. But this kitten is just eating food off of the ground. They are very happily engaged with their activity, and if it's a little uncomfortable, it's not enough to make them jump, right? This final video, I'm not even going to speed up because it is so fast. This was a very, very shy young dog who came to our care, is learning about people. She's since been adopted into a loving home, but was very, you can see she's very flinchy, don't touch me, don't hold me, and would flail and scream and try to bite if she was restrained. All we are doing is scattering some food on the ground. And while she's eating it, we're going to go in with that needle and give her her vaccination. Now, not all animals in the shelter or in the behavior program are going to be tolerant of this, but because we have this tool in our toolbox, we can start with this. We can say, hey, can we do this in a fear-free way? Boom, it's done. And she now gets to eat the rest of that treat scatter and have a more positive association with veterinary handling. But what happens if you do have a little bit of extra time to give to this process? This is Alan. This is one of my favorite videos that a client has ever sent me. Alan's cat that he had recently adopted is asthmatic and also very handling sensitive. So this guy needed this inhaler on his face for at least 10 seconds twice a day. Because of the way this was built, you don't have to do the 10 seconds consecutively. So Alan contacted us, went through our feline private training program, which we do virtually, and was able to teach Toro how to do this.
On legislation to authorize the construction higher than
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. Yeah.
And as you might imagine, the crowd went wild in our office when he sent us this video. We were so excited for him. This way, he was able to ask Toro to voluntarily put his face into the inhaler so that he didn't have to damage that delicate relationship he was building right after adoption. And this was early days. He can now get to the full 10 seconds, which we're very, very proud. Now let's talk a little bit about that representation and accessibility. I think it's really important to be able to see examples of what can be done with companion animals, where you can get to if you want to start on this journey. And social media can be a great option for that. In the tail mail that's going to go out after this presentation, we're going to send out a list of some of our favorite social media accounts for this type of stuff so that if you're interested in exploring it, you can start your journey there. This is a video of a dog who is offering a chin rest behavior. And we call this a start button. So if at any moment the dog is uncomfortable with what's going on, and you just saw there, if he brings his chin up off of the table, that says, oh, Mom, I'm not comfortable. I don't want to do this no more. And we're going to respect that decision. But counterintuitively, because he has the option to opt out, he's much more likely to opt in because he can trust that if something scary happens, he can say no. This build up that behavior gradually. They become quite comfortable with it. Now, this one I think is just a really cute and fun example of how you can get very creative with this. This is a dog who is learning to have to open his mouth for oral exams. And you can see they're using a pair of kitchen tongs. So that click marks the moment that he gets it right. Thank you for putting your mouth on that. And then you'll see them transferring to, I know you can do it with kitchen tongs, my finger. I don't want to have to bring the kitchen tongs to the vet perhaps. And then adding on top, can I pick up your muzzle to look at this? Now that's a work in progress. Here is a fantastic example of a very similar start button behavior to this dog over here with a cat. This cat has learned that if they lay their head down on this mat, that will allow their person to come in and say, yes, I consent to you trimming my nails. Click treat, thank you for letting me do that. But if at any time, and you're going to see here in a moment, there's going to be a moment where they lift their head up off of the mat and their person immediately goes, oh, did you want me to stop? Are we done? And he goes, no. I think we're good. So wait for it. You're going to see it right here. We're going to see him lay his head down. That head comes up. They immediately go, oh, are you sure? And he lays it right back down to say, yes, this is something that you can go ahead and do. Amazing voluntary, non-restrictive behavior. And for any of y'all who have tried to trim a cat's nails, you know how impressive that is. So in terms of accessibility and representation, how does East Bay SPCA support that goal? We have a ton of free and accessible training resources on our website. We have a free behavior helpline. For the first 15 minutes, you can talk for free with one of our certified trainers, and it's $30 for 30 minutes after that. We have public group dog training classes at various levels. We have private trainings for both dogs and cats, though cats are virtual only. We have a library of over 50 training handouts that you can access for free for dogs and cats on our website, including some that relate to cooperative care. We have a suite of on-demand educational webinars. We are working on translating that suite into Spanish. And very excitingly, we are currently working on a cooperative care webinar, which is going to give you all basically a stepping process to say, okay, gosh, I don't know where to start. I just saw all those finished products, but my cat doesn't look like that. My cat runs away when they see the nail clippers. This will give you a step-by-step instructional process of how to begin doing some of the things that we are talking about today. And if you volunteer or foster with us, we have a ton of free resources that we offer to our volunteers and fosters that include cooperative care, especially in the dog pathway. We have a ton of training resources that we offer to our volunteers to be able to work with our shelter dogs on these behaviors. Now, talking about accessibility, this might seem daunting to learn how to do something intricate like this with these animals, but it really, really is possible. I like to tell my clients that the process of learning how to use positive reinforcement training, including cooperative care, is very much like learning to cook for the first time. You need the right tools and the right environment. You need a kitchen, so to speak, and all of the implements. You need a basic knowledge of how you want your food to taste. What do you want to cook? What is the outcome that you are desiring? And what are your flavor preferences? You need the right recipe for whatever those preferences are, and you need someone to model the mechanical skills. Anyone who's ever tried to flip a pancake like this knows that this can be much more helpful. So having someone to model all that for you is really, really important. And that's why we're so excited to offer this cooperative care webinar that's in the works right now. Because once you have the basics down, you can really cook anything. And that's the coolest part about training. You don't have to be, a guru of 30 years to get really impressive results. And that is just about the end of our presentation. I want to point out, if any of y'all want to reach out to our department directly with any questions or additional resources, you can feel free to email us at training@eastbayspca.org. And this is the link to the behavior section on our website, which is eastbayspca.org/behavior. And we are going to put a link in the chat right now. If you're interested in that upcoming educational webinar on cooperative care, that step-by-step process on how to do all the stuff we just talked about, you can fill out a quick form so that we can notify you when it becomes available. And now we are going to jump into some discussion questions. Welcome back, Julie.
Thank you, Micah. That was fantastic, especially the videos. Very impressive, very entertaining. I did have a quick comment. We have gotten feedback that not everyone has access to the chat. So we will be sending an email follow-up to everyone who registered for the webinar with that information, in addition to the other social media information Micah mentioned. In addition, please feel free to give us your questions. At the bottom of your screen, you should see a Q&A section that you can click on and type your questions in. We have an allotted amount of time for questions. If we get too many to be able to answer in this amount of time, we will follow up with the email and have that information within the email. But let's go ahead and get started. So Micah, here's our first question. My dog is already 6 years old and hates the vet. How much progress can you reasonably expect to make with this process?
Yes, so that is actually a very common circumstance, right? We might have a dog who has prior experiences that make the vet very, very scary. If we were working with you as a one-on-one client, we'd want to look specifically at, are we talking for examinations? Is this specific to invasive handling, like full restraint? The short answer is there's so much progress that you can make in terms of two-way communication with your animal, and specifically creating behaviors and habits that can be translated to a veterinary office. So you can practice certain behaviors at home that then you can begin to use in novel situations like at the vet, where the predictability of that behavior becomes what makes it comfortable for the animal. I mentioned previously that the restraint specifically is often scarier for our animals than the actual pain or discomfort of whatever procedure they might be getting. And when you give them an opportunity to have a say in that process, it is absolutely incredible how much progress you can make, even with an animal who is not a puppy, or who has had prior experiences that are really tough for them.
Great. Second question. Could you use this training to get a cat to open its mouth to take a pill?
Oh, 100%. There are a lot of options when it comes to oral medication. And without going too far down the rabbit hole, there are lots of ways that you can ask for voluntary care, but absolutely. And in fact, in my own household, I have a cat who often takes allergy medication. And one of the things that we have specifically worked on is asking for a specific position where he will voluntarily give me his head to open up his mouth, put the pill in, and then he gets his favorite reinforcer. So 100%. And this was a cat, not to say, oh, this is the trainer's cat, but this is a guy who used to run away when that pill bottle would come out. So he really has made a lot of progress.
Great. I'd love for you to come over and do that with one of my cats.
Right. We can do that. We can talk about it.
Question number 3. How do I work with my 2.5-year-old dog to modify behavior associated with anxiety, such as pseudo-aggressive around new dogs?
So that's a little outside the scope of this conversation. And I think, as with so many answers to questions about behavior, it depends. It depends on what your dog's threshold is, what their learning history has been, how these behaviors may have come about. But one of the things that we actually offer, if what you're seeing in terms of the pseudo-aggression that you're describing is anything related to like leash reactivity, maybe there's barking, lunging, snapping, one of our resources on the website, because we get so many questions about this exact topic, we made an entire webinar dedicated to that topic because we know that so many people are working on dog reactivity. We also have, if it's an inter-dog challenge, we have a couple of handouts in our behavior and training library that relate specifically both to introductions, multi-dog tips, and how to keep those interactions safe, including how to read things like play that maybe goes too far. So I definitely direct you to those resources first, but you are also welcome to set up a free helpline to be like, hey, what are my best options for this? In essence, it's definitely something you can work on. And as I've mentioned, it is our most common training topic. So we work with that all the time.
Great. Okay, next question. What if your dog or cat is not motivated by food?
This is a great question. And again, the answer is, it always starts with, it depends. For many animals, the stress of a situation like being in the vet will absolutely depress appetite. So if on another day they're like, hot dogs are my favorite thing, and then when you get to the vet, they're like, you could wave a filet mignon in front of me and I'm not eating it, that we would approach a little bit differently than an animal who, could kind of take or leave food at any given time. A really good example of this is actually the cat that I mentioned in my home who voluntarily now takes pills. I tried to start that process using food, using like a meat tube, a churu tube, if people are familiar. And my other cat loves churu, and so does this cat. But we found out that in that moment of, oh, you're going to put a pill in my mouth, that was too scary. And he was like, I don't want food at all. However, there are other reinforcers that can be even more powerful than food, and it depends on the learner. For my particular cat, for whatever reason, getting his butt pet while he is eating just was the best thing in the whole world. And so I noticed that, oh, that's what he really wants. I'm going to try and use that as my reinforcer for this behavior. And like I said, now he comes running when he hears the pill bottle. He's so excited to take his pill every day. So sometimes we need to shape using reinforcers in a specific environment so that we can decrease the stress. But sometimes it's about finding alternate reinforcers. So get to play detective a little bit.
Great. So on the opposite spectrum, I've tried using treats and my dog gets too excited. What should I do?
Yes. So there are those enthusiastic learners for whom, as soon as you pull out a piece of hot dog, everything else goes out the window. Oh my God, I'm going to throw every trick I know at you in the book. I can't focus on anything but that treat. Oftentimes using a lower value treat can be very helpful for that. And training out of context. So if you're using a lower value treat, you can train in different levels of distraction. You can look at training at specific times, perhaps after this animal has just been satiated, after they just had a meal, so they're going to be less enthusiastic about that. And then using that to kind of take those pieces of, I've learned this behavior at low distraction with low value. Can I continue to shape that relaxation or that calm behavior as we increase the value of the food?
Great. Let's see here. If I try using these techniques and have a question, can I reach out to your team?
100%. So that is where our helpline is really great to start with, because you get a whole 15 minutes chatting with one of us about kind of what you've tried so far, what some of your, what are some of the speed bumps you've run into, and because of whatever that might be, what would make sense for your next steps. If another phone consult might be good, again, anything after that first 15 minutes is just $30, so you can call and chat with us again. Or if you'd like to set up either an in-person or a virtual training, those are also available. So you can start that process with us in a lot of different ways on the website.
Great. Will you send a link to a video of this presentation so I can share it with others?
Yes, so I believe that a link to this presentation and the recording is going to go out in the follow-up email.
Yes, I can confirm that is the plan. See, I keep hearing about fear-free, including when I go to my vet. Can you talk a bit more about what that means?
Yes, so fear-free is sort of it's become a paradigm in sheltering, in veterinary practice. Essentially, it's an organization that began really trying to change cultural paradigms in professional industries around how we choose to administer medication, how animals move through our system, but it's very all-encompassing. It is an organization, and they have many different branches. So they have fear-free pets, so people who are looking to do these practices with their own animals. They have shelter fear-free, veterinary fear-free, but it is an organization that has a ton of resources. I would definitely encourage looking them up. The really cool thing about them is that, and we utilize their techniques in this shelter, it's not just specific to the moments that these animals are having like a vet exam. It really takes into account their entire environment. So how can we make holdings maybe a little bit quieter? How can we add visual barriers so that cats who are fearful aren't staring directly at dogs who are barking? Things that feel kind of common sense that really make a huge impact on the fear and stress that can accompany a shelter stay. And I know, as someone who's been with the organization for almost 9 years now, seeing the impact that these techniques have had on our population is so encouraging. It's really inspiring.
So would this training work for our shy cat who's running away from new people, pretty much anybody but us? Even with our regular pet sitter, she's always runs under the bed.
Yes, this is something that, again, we work with quite a bit. In fact, one of our first feline private trainings that we ever did was a cat very similar to what you described, a cat who had a real set circle of friends and anybody else was highly suspect. You can 100% desensitize and counter condition a fearful cat or dog or horse, any animal, to becoming more comfortable with strangers in their space and seeing that potentially strangers in their space predict really positive things for them and build those habits. 100% it's possible. That first cat that I was talking about who would, run from any stranger now lounges out in the living room, has fantastic recall. They've taught her how to do a whole bunch of different tricks, but she is very, very comfortable interacting with people in her space that she doesn't know.
Great. So staying on the topic of cats, have you ever worked with a cat who hates their nails being trimmed?
Absolutely. This is, again, a very, very common challenge. Ideally, if you in a perfect world, if you get a kitten and you start really young and you do a lot of paw handling that's associated with really positive things, you'll have a cat that will grow up loving nail trims and loving it when their paws are manipulated. But that's not always real life. That's not always the case. And there are so many different ways to work with this particular behavior. And it doesn't all have to look as fancy as that video that we saw. The short answer is yes, and there's a lot of different ways to do it.
So for in-person consults, is it possible to bring multiple dogs to see how they interact with each other? Individually, my dogs are all well behaved, but together it's a circus.
Ah, I can see how that might be. There are a couple of restrictions on that just because we want the ratio to dogs to trainers to usually stay the same. I would say email our department for that particular adjustment. It's definitely possible. I think we just have to talk a little bit logistically about what that would look like. And certainly, one of the things that we have encountered in the past with this type of challenge is it really does actually help to bring them in separately and train specific behaviors without the other dog present so that they can get good at those behaviors without the distraction of the other dog. And then once they have the muscle memory of all of that, then we begin to introduce the other dog as a distraction. But yes, we definitely can accommodate that, but I would email the department.
Great. So this is the last question we have in the Q&A. So for all of our guests, please feel free if you have any questions. We're coming down towards the end, so please put your questions in the Q&A so we have time to answer them. So do you partner with other types of animal organizations such as zoos, sharing what you have learned across your fields?
Absolutely. And that is one of the things that I have the most fun with in my particular position. It's funny you should mention zoos. We actually just started the conversation with Oakland Zoo to do a trade with their Teen Wild Guide program to have some of our youth program kids go and do a field trip to the zoo to see their cooperative care and veterinary practices, and then have their Teen Wild Guides come to the shelter and have a demonstration with us. Our humane education program actually has a lot of really cool outreach with a number of different organizations in the area. And certainly we also have a network of trainers and training enthusiasts who meet once every other month just to talk theory and to share resources and to be friends and get to know each other, so that we have this incredible community of trainers who are educated, who are certified, and just training enthusiasts who really get nerdy about the theory like all of us in our department do. So yes, we are very, very lucky in that in our community, we have so many different connections with other like-minded organizations.
That's great. Well, Micah, we don't have any other questions. So I just want to thank you again for doing this wonderful presentation today. Our behavior and training department is just essential to our animals here and making them as comfortable as possible. And we appreciate it and the amazing resources that we provide to the community. So thank you so much. It was wonderful.
Thank you for having me.
On behalf of all of us here at East Bay SPCA, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us today. Our work is made possible because of supporters like you. If you're ever interested in ways you can help, including volunteering or donating, please don't hesitate to reach out to me anytime, as we are grateful for your support. Have a lovely afternoon, and we hope you'll join us again for another Lunch and Learn series soon.